Surrey's fingers closed around the warm meal parcel, and Gavin Rowe watched them do it from 3 meters away. He kept wiping the steel counter as if nothing had happened. The evening rush pushed through Astor Gate Transit Market in waves. Freight crews, transfer families, customs runners, maintenance drones humming along their floor tracks. Gavin's galley sat in the middle of it all, a narrow human food stall squeezed between a Keshari tea booth and a stall that sold pressure masks in 6 species sizes. Surrey had learned the traffic pattern well. She waited until the queue bent toward the drink dispenser. She slipped beside the cooling ledge, lifted one wrapped meal, and vanished behind a stack of supply crates before anyone in line turned their head. Gavin did not call after her. He counted to 4 instead. Then he looked beneath the spice tin. The green plastic meal token he had left there that morning was gone. "Still short one?" asked Mina from the tea booth next door. Gavin slid the cleaning cloth into the rinse tray. "No. You had 12 tokens at noon. I still have 12 meals paid for." Mina stared at him over the steam from her kettle. "That sentence is suspiciously specific." Gavin turned toward the next customer. Soup or grain bowl. He had seen Surrey steal the first meal 9 days earlier. That first time, she had been bad at it. Her coat had been too large, probably adult clothing cut down at the sleeves. Her pointed Aarón ears had flattened against her dark hair every time someone looked her way. She had grabbed a parcel with both hands and nearly knocked over a tray of metal cups escaping. Gavin had almost stopped her. Then he noticed she did not open the food. Hungry people usually opened food. She tucked it under her coat and ran. The next night she came back. The night after that, she came back again. Always near closing. Always one parcel. Always the same ledge. On the 4th night, Gavin followed at a distance after locking the shutters. Surrey crossed 2 market levels, rode a cargo lift down to worker housing, then entered a corridor where the station lighting had been dimmed to half power because most of its registered tenants were gone. She slipped through a door that did not fully close. Gavin heard coughing from inside. Not Surrey, an adult voice. He left before the girl could discover him. The next afternoon, he asked the clinic vendor 3 stalls down what foods Aarón tolerated during respiratory illness. The answer was not encouraging. "Nothing heavy," the medic said. "Low oil, low salt, warm, soft texture. If they're running fever, strong spices can make nausea worse." Gavin looked at the pepper paste in his hand. That night, the parcel Surrey stole contained rice broth, root mash, and thin strips of protein cooked until they nearly fell apart. The next morning, the reusable carrier came back. Clean. It was tucked beneath the cooling ledge. On top of it sat 1 green meal token. Gavin stood looking at it for a long time. He had not given Surrey a token. The galley used them for prepaid worker meals. Green meant the meal had been purchased but not yet collected. Surrey must have found one somewhere, or traded for it, or saved it from before her situation changed. Whatever its history, she had returned it. That told Gavin almost everything he needed to know about the theft. The following evening, he added an extra meal to his own staff allowance. He logged it properly. He placed it on the cooling ledge. Then he turned his back at exactly the wrong moment. Surrey took it. For the next week, they repeated the ritual. 1 extra meal, 1 missing parcel, 1 clean carrier returned by morning. Sometimes the green token came back with it. Sometimes it disappeared for a day, then reappeared beneath the spice tin. Gavin never asked. He did start paying attention to what remained in the carrier. When the root mash returned untouched, he stopped packing it. When the broth container came back scraped clean, he made more. When 1 strip of fruit appeared in the empty carrier, carefully wrapped in paper, he understood it as payment and ate it during prep. Mina watched all of this with increasing suspicion. "You know," she said one morning, "most people hide crimes less neatly." Gavin stirred broth. "What crime?" "The one you're cooperating with. She's stealing food I paid for." "That is not how stealing works. It's been working fine so far." Mina leaned closer. "You could just give it to her." Gavin looked toward the market entrance. Surrey had never come near the galley in daylight. "Not yet," he said. The girl was doing something dangerous because she believed it was the only way to keep control of the situation. Taking that control from her might make Gavin feel generous. It would not necessarily make her safer. So he waited. On the 17th evening, Surrey arrived early. Gavin noticed because she stood behind a support column for almost 15 minutes instead of slipping through the closing crowd. Her face looked thinner, her shoulders were tight. The market was too busy for the normal routine. Gavin packed the extra meal anyway. He placed it on the ledge. Then a security pair entered the aisle. Suri froze. The security officers were not looking for her. They were checking stall permits, moving booth to booth with tablets in hand. Suri did not know that. She backed away from the support column. Gavin saw the decision forming before she made it. She was going to leave without the food. He lifted the parcel from the cooling ledge and set it beside the waste tray instead. Closing discount, he announced loudly to nobody in particular. Unclaimed meal. First person who wants it can take it. Mina made a choking sound next door. One security officer glanced toward him, uninterested. Suri waited. Gavin turned away. When he looked back, the parcel was gone. So was the girl. The next morning, the green token sat directly in the center of his counter, not hidden beneath the spice tin. Gavin picked it up. Someone had scratched 3 small lines into one edge. He was still studying them when a voice said, "You knew." Suri stood on the customer side of the counter. In daylight, she looked younger than Gavin had expected. Her coat was neatly patched at the elbows. Her dark hair was tied back with a strip of blue fabric. Her eyes stayed fixed on the token in his hand. Gavin set it down. "About the meal. All of them." "Yes." Her ears flattened. "How long?" "First one." Suri stared at him. Gavin reached for the broth pot because his hands needed something ordinary to do. "You followed me." "Once." Her expression sharpened. "I stopped at the corridor. You saw my mother." "No." "You heard her." "Yes." Suri's fingers curled against the counter edge. Gavin did not tell her to relax. People usually said that when they wanted someone else's fear to become more convenient. He ladled broth into a cup. "Is she worse?" he asked. Suri hesitated. Then she nodded once. "Clinic." "No." "Can't or woe." Her jaw tightened. Gavin set the cup down between them. That was a real question, not a trap. Suri looked at the broth but did not touch it. "My mother's work contract ended 32 days ago," she said. "The company dorm access ended with it. Her medical account was attached to the contract. That shouldn't cancel emergency care." "It does not." "Then why?" "Because emergency intake checks household status." Gavin stopped. Suri's gaze dropped to the cup. "If they decide I am without a registered guardian during review, they can place me in transit care until her status is settled." "How long?" "I don't know." That explained the food. It also explained why she had chosen theft over asking. Gavin leaned his hip against the counter. "What does your mother say?" "She says we wait until she can walk far enough to go to a community office herself." "And can she?" "No." There were 10 things Gavin wanted to say. None of them would fix the next hour, so he chose the useful question. "What can she keep down?" Suri looked up. "The broth." "Anything else?" "Soft grain, the yellow fruit, not the white root." "I noticed." Her ears lifted a fraction. "You changed it." "Yes." "Why?" Gavin looked at the cooling ledge. Because bringing back food she couldn't eat seemed inefficient. Suri's expression changed so quickly he nearly smiled. It was not amusement exactly, more like disbelief finding a crack to escape through. "You are strange," she said. "I sell human soup in an orbital market. That was established." She finally picked up the cup. Gavin let her drink without speaking. When she finished, she placed the green token beside it. "You don't need that," he said. "Yes, I do." "No, you don't." Her shoulders stiffened again. Gavin pushed the token back toward her. "I'm not asking you to owe me." "I don't." "Good. Then why are you giving it back?" "Because if the token matters to you, keep it. The meal is already paid for." "By who?" "Me." Suri stared. "For how long?" "Since the 5th one." The cup stopped halfway to the counter. "You paid for food I stole from you." "Technically, I paid for food you relocated. That is not how stealing works." Gavin glanced toward Mina's booth. Mina, shamelessly listening while pretending to polish a kettle, raised both eyebrows. "Apparently everyone agrees on that except me," Gavin said. Suri almost smiled. "Almost." Then the worry returned. "You cannot report us." "I haven't." "You cannot tell the clinic." "I won't make that decision for you." She studied him carefully. "Why not?" "Because it's your mother." That answer mattered more than Gavin expected. Suri picked up the token. She closed her fingers around it. Then she left by the front aisle, instead of disappearing behind the supply crates. The next evening, she still took the parcel from the cooling ledge. Gavin still turned away, but now she said, "Good night," before running. 3 days later, She returned the carrier with a folded scrap of paper inside. No words, just a rough drawing of the galley counter, the broth pot, and a green square beneath a spice tin. Gavin taped it inside the cabinet door where customers could not see. The routine changed after that. Suri sometimes arrived before closing and waited on the customer side. Gavin taught her which lids sealed properly. She corrected his pronunciation of Sava, her mother's name. He learned that Suri hated sweet tea, but drank it anyway when Mina offered it because refusing food from adults seemed to make her nervous. Mina learned to stop asking directly. Suri began bringing back small things that were not payment and could not honestly be mistaken for it. A loose fastening screw from the market floor, a strip of clean wrapping fiber, once a tiny polished stone the color of smoke. Gavin put the screw into a drawer. He used the fiber to tie labels. He kept the stone beside the register. On the 23rd evening, the routine changed again. Suri arrived while Gavin was labeling storage jars. Instead of reaching for the waiting parcel, she stood in front of the counter and watched him write dates. "What happens if I stop taking it?" she asked. Gavin capped the marker. "The food." "Yes, I stop making the extra portion. And the credits you spend, I keep them." She frowned. "You would not be angry about having more money. You know what I mean." Gavin did. Suri had been testing the same thing from different directions for days, whether the meals were a debt, whether leaving would make the kindness turn into accusation, whether help had an invisible contract she had failed to read. "No," he said, "if you stop coming, I'll assume you don't need the meal, or you found something better, or you got tired of my cooking. That last one is possible." Cruel. Her mouth twitched. Then she looked at the parcel. "Can I choose what goes in it?" Gavin stepped aside from the prep surface. "Within reason." Suri came behind the counter for the first time. She moved carefully as if expecting an alarm to sound. Gavin showed her the low-salt broth, the soft grain, the yellow fruit, and the mild protein strips. She pointed to smaller portions of each. "My mother gets angry when she cannot finish food," Suri said. "She thinks it means she is getting worse. Then we make less. She needs more. She needs what she can eat. We can refill the rest tomorrow." Suri considered that. Then she packed the meal herself. When she reached for the lid, Gavin handed her the marker. "What do I write?" "Whatever tells tomorrow you what happened today." She stared at the blank label, then drew a small circle instead of words. "What does that mean?" Gavin asked. "Enough." He nodded. "Good system." The next morning the carrier returned with the same circle drawn on the clean lid. Under it, Suri had added a second, smaller mark. Gavin did not understand that one until she came after school. "It means she asked who cooked it," Suri explained. "What did you tell her?" "The truth." Gavin looked up. "All of it." Suri nodded. "That you knew." "And she was angry. At me. At me first, then at you, then at herself, then she ate the fruit." "That sounds productive." Suri gave him a flat look. "She says stealing from someone who knows is a very stupid kind of stealing." Gavin sighed. "Finally an ally." Suri laughed despite herself. Then she placed the green token beside the register rather than beneath the spice tin. "My mother says we have to return this properly." "You already have." She says properly means where you can see it. Gavin slid the token back across the counter. "Tell your mother she can argue with me when she is well enough to come here." Suri looked at the token, then at him. "That sounds like an invitation." "It is." She took the token. This time she did not hide it. On the 26th day, Suri did not come. Gavin kept the extra meal warm until closing. She did not come the next day either. He told himself there were many possible reasons. He told himself Sava might be improving. He told himself the girl had found another source of food. He told himself he was a cook, not a guardian, not a medic, not a station official, not anything with the authority to walk into someone's room and demand answers. On the third morning, he found the green token beneath the spice tin. Beside it lay the blue strip Suri normally used to tie back her hair. Gavin closed the stall. Mina took one look at his face and did not make a joke. "I'll watch the shutter," she said. He reached the worker corridor in 7 minutes. Suri was sitting outside the half-closing door. She had both hands wrapped around her knees. Her hair fell loose around her face. When she saw Gavin, she stood too quickly. "You weren't supposed to come. You left a token on my counter. I returned it. You left the ribbon too." Suri looked away. From inside the room came Sava's tired voice. "Suri." The girl turned at once. "I'm here." Gavin stayed in the corridor. He did not cross the doorway. "Do you want me to leave?" he asked. Suri looked at him. For a moment he saw the same calculation she had made every night in the market. Risk, distance, escape route. What could be lost? Then she stepped inside. She looked back once. "Wait there." Gavin waited. Several minutes passed. Then Suri returned. "My mother says you can come in." The room was small but orderly. 2 sleeping pads, a storage cabinet, 1 heater panel, a stack of folded work uniforms that Sava was clearly no longer wearing. Savakesh sat propped against the wall. She looked exhausted, but her eyes were alert. She had Suri's same narrow features and the same habit of studying a person before speaking. "You are the cook," she said. "Gavin, I know." That made him pause. Sava's mouth moved slightly. "Suri talks while she thinks I sleep." Suri made an offended sound. Sava lifted one hand. "Your food kept me alive long enough to become inconvenient again." Gavin set down the container he had brought. "That sounds promising." "It is." Her voice weakened at the end. Gavin looked at Suri. The girl's face had tightened. Sava noticed too. "I am not dying," she said. Suri's ears flattened. "You said that yesterday, and I remain correct." Gavin crouched beside the container. "I brought broth." Sava sighed. "Of course you did." Occupational weakness. He did not suggest the clinic. Not immediately. Instead he asked what Sava wanted. That surprised both of them. Sava took time before answering. "I want to walk into the community office myself," she said. "I want them to see a worker asking for review, not an invalid being delivered. And I do not want Suri removed while strangers decide whether I am still a proper mother." Gavin nodded. "What do you need to walk there?" 3 good days. "Then let's try to buy you 3 good days." Suri looked at him sharply. "With what?" "Food, rest. Mina knows a respiratory nurse who does legal home visits. Your mother can say no." Sava considered that. A legal visit does not trigger household intake. "I'll confirm before anyone comes near this door." Suri's eyes narrowed. "How?" "By asking questions, until people regret meeting me." Sava laughed once, then coughed lightly into her sleeve. That was the first time Gavin heard Suri laugh too. The next 2 days were not miraculous. Sava did not suddenly recover because a human cared. She slept, she ate. A licensed nurse examined her after confirming the visit would not trigger custodial review. Gavin paid the fee from the galley's emergency maintenance account, then discovered that was not allowed and repaid the account from his own savings before Mina could lecture him. On the 3rd day, Sava walked the corridor twice. On the 4th, Suri appeared at Gavin's galley before opening. She was carrying no empty food carrier. "My mother wants to come here," she said. Gavin stopped stacking bowls. "Here? To the market? Is she strong enough?" "She says yes." "What do you say?" Suri looked toward the fold-out side table Gavin used for inventory after hours. "I think she is stubborn enough." "That helps." Suri did not smile. "She wants to meet you properly." "We met." "No, you came to our room because I left the token." Gavin waited. Suri took a breath. "I want to bring her here." There it was. Not rescue, not necessity. Joyce. Gavin folded the inventory sheets and cleared the side table. "What time?" After closing, Suri entered through the front aisle with Sava holding her arm. Sava wore one of the old work jackets from the room. It hung loosely on her shoulders, but she was upright. Gavin had closed the galley shutters halfway, so the market noise softened, without making the place feel hidden. He set 3 bowls on the side table. Suri stopped. "You made 3. I can count. I'm not sick. You still eat, don't you?" Sava sat carefully. She forgets when worried. "I do not." "You forgot yesterday." "That was different." Gavin placed the green token beside Suri's bowl. She looked at it. "You said I didn't need it." "You don't." "Then why is it here?" Gavin shrugged. "Habit." Suri picked it up. For weeks it had been the closest thing she allowed herself to give him. Now she turned it between her fingers and set it beside the spice tin instead. "Keep it," she said. Gavin looked at her. Suri's ears lifted. "I know where the food is now." Sava covered a smile with her hand. Gavin clipped the token to a small hook beneath the shelf. Then they ate. The next morning, Inspector Corindal arrived before lunch. He wore the dark gray coat of Astorgate Commercial Welfare Review and carried a tablet with Gavin's stall number already open. "Gavin Rowe." "That depends." Corin's expression did not change. "On whether you're here to buy soup." "I'm not." "Then unfortunately yes." Mina made a noise next door that sounded suspiciously like a laugh. Corin turned the tablet around. The first image showed Suri taking a parcel from Gavin's cooling ledge. The second showed her doing it 4 days later. The third was timestamped the previous week. Gavin's stomach tightened. Market security records. Corin swiped to a form. We received a welfare flag linked to repeated food theft by an unregistered minor. She didn't steal from me. Corin looked up. The recordings are clear. So am I. You filed no theft report. Correct. You also filed no child risk notice. Correct. Did you know the girl? Gavin glanced at the token clipped beneath the shelf. Yes. Corin's eyes sharpened. How long? Long enough. That is not a useful answer. Since the first meal. Mina went silent. Corin stared at Gavin for several seconds. You knowingly allowed an unregistered minor to remove food from your licensed premises night after night. Yes. Why? Because the food was for her mother. Corin's expression shifted, but only slightly. That makes this more serious, not less. Gavin felt anger rise and forced it back down. Corin continued. An ill adult outside registered housing, a minor collecting food by theft, no medical intake, no welfare contact. You understood these facts and chose not to report them. I understood some of them and chose to investigate privately. I chose to feed them without knowing whether the child was safe. I knew enough to know she was trying to keep her mother with her. Corin's voice stayed calm. And if her mother had died in that room while you protected their secrecy? The question landed harder than Gavin wanted it to. Corin saw that. That is why these systems exist, the inspector said. Not to punish kindness, to stop frightened people from disappearing inside problems until the problems become emergencies. Gavin did not answer immediately, because Corin was not entirely wrong. That was the dangerous part. Suri's fear of separation had been real, so had Sava's illness. Gavin had respected their choices, but respect did not make every consequence disappear. What happens now? He asked. Your food service license is temporarily suspended while we review whether you knowingly facilitated theft and failed mandatory welfare reporting. Gavin looked at the lunch queue forming beyond the stall. How temporary? 2 days if facts are simple, longer if they are not. Can I appeal? Yes. Corin tapped the tablet. There is also a straightforward statement you can make now. Gavin looked at him. If you say you suspected the girl's situation but did not know she was taking the meals, the commercial violation becomes minor. Failure to notice theft is not the same as facilitating it. The market noise seemed to thin around Gavin. Corin's tone remained professional. You are not required to accept responsibility for a child's decision. Gavin looked again at the security image. Suri's hand on the parcel, his own back turned toward her. Deliberately, if he said he had not known, the recordings would become proof against her instead of proof about him. A thief, a repeat offender, a child whose pattern might be used to justify exactly the kind of intervention she feared. Gavin rested both hands on the counter. I knew. Corin did not move. Mr. Rowe, I knew every time. You should understand what you are accepting. I do. Your license may be revoked. I know. Your stall lease depends on that license. I know. Corin studied him. Why would you accept liability for food another person took? Gavin's answer came easily. Because I paid for it before she touched it. Corin blinked. Gavin reached beneath the counter and pulled out the purchase ledger. Every extra meal sat there in plain numbers. Staff allowance transfer. Personal credit debit. 1 extra portion. Again. Corin scrolled through the entries. You logged these. It's a licensed stall. You said nothing to the girl. Not at first. Why? Because she was more afraid of being helped than of stealing. Corin looked at him for a long time. Then he closed the ledger. The suspension still stands. I figured. There will be a review tomorrow. All right. And the Kesh household will be contacted. Gavin's jaw tightened. Corin noticed. They will be contacted, he repeated. Not separated by default. The facts matter. They usually do. Corin took the tablet back. For everyone, Mr. Rowe. Then he left. Gavin lowered the shutter. For the first time in 6 years, Gavin's galley went dark during lunch. He stood inside the silent stall and stared at the bowls stacked above the counter. Mina came through the side access, carrying 2 cups of tea. She set one down. You could have said you didn't know. Yes. You might lose the galley. Yes. She pushed the cup toward him. You are very bad at protecting your own interests. Gavin picked it up. Apparently, everyone agrees on that too. The review hall was built for efficiency, which meant it had no softness anywhere. Gray walls, gray table, gray light. Gavin sat on one side with his ledger. Corin sat at the end. Across from them sat Sava and Suri. Sava looked stronger than she had in the worker room. Suri looked furious enough to chew through metal. Gavin had not seen them since the suspension. Suri stared at him. "You told them." "I told them I knew. You told them about us." "No, the security records did that." Suri looked toward Corin. "You suspended him." "Yes," Corin said, "for feeding us, for knowingly participating in an undocumented situation involving a minor and an ill adult. He fed us." "I understand that is your view." "No," Suri leaned forward. "You understand the words. That is not the same thing." Sava touched her arm. Suri stopped, but only barely. Corin turned to Sava. "Ms. Kesh, did Gavin Rowe ever ask you or your daughter for labor, money, access to your residence, information, loyalty, or any other compensation for the meals?" "No." "Did he encourage Suri to continue taking food secretly?" Sava looked at Gavin. "He allowed her to remain in control until she believed asking would not cost her me." Corin's expression remained neutral. "That is interpretation. It is motherhood." The room went quiet. Sava continued, "My daughter believed every official door had a price. Work office meant contract termination. Clinic meant household review. Welfare meant possible separation. Gavin's stall was the first place where she took something, and nobody demanded the rest of her life in exchange." Gavin looked down at his hands. Corin tapped the tablet once. "Mr. Rowe did eventually visit your residence. At my permission, he arranged a nurse. At my permission, he paid for the visit. At my annoyance." Gavin looked up. Sava gave him a tired side glance. "That part we are still discussing." For the first time, Corin almost smiled. Then he turned to Suri. "Why this stall?" Suri's ears lowered. "What? There are hundreds of food vendors in Astor Gate. Why did you repeatedly take food from this one?" Suri looked at Gavin. He did not nod. He did not tell her to answer. The question belonged to her. "The first time was because his counter was easy," she said. Mina, seated in the witness row, covered her mouth. Gavin pretended not to hear. Suri continued. "The second time was because he had not reported me." Corin waited. "The third time the food was different." "Different how?" "It was made for someone sick." "When did you realize he knew?" "I suspected then." "And yet you returned." "Yes." "Why?" Suri's fingers closed around something in her palm. When she opened them, the green meal token lay there. Gavin stared. He had not noticed it, missing from the galley hook. Suri placed it on the gray table, because he never used knowing as a chain. Nobody moved. Suri looked directly at Corin. "He could have stopped me the first night. He could have made me explain. He could have called security. He could have made me say thank you while my mother was sick and I was scared. He did none of those things." Her voice shook once. She steadied it. "He changed the food. He paid for it. He let me return the carrier. He let me believe I was still solving the problem, until I was ready to admit I needed help." Corin looked at the token. Suri pushed it toward Gavin. "When I knew he knew, I came back anyway." Gavin felt something in his chest tighten. Corin's voice softened slightly. "You understand that Mr. Rowe may lose his stall because of that choice." Suri's expression changed. "He said he did not know." "No," Corin said. "He said the opposite." Suri turned to Gavin. "You could have said you didn't." "Yes." "Why didn't you?" Gavin looked at the token between them. "Because then they'd have to believe you stole from me." Suri stared at him. "I did." "No, you said that before. I paid for the meals. I put them where you could reach them. After the first week, calling it theft would just be me lying with better paperwork." Suri's eyes filled, but she did not look away. Gavin did not reach across the table. He let her keep the distance she wanted. Sava placed her hand over Suri's instead. Corin sat back. The review panel members exchanged quiet remarks. One of them opened Gavin's ledger again. Another pulled up the market security sequence and watched several recordings in order. The pattern looked different when seen that way. Gavin turning aside, the parcel disappearing, the carrier returning, Suri lingering longer each night. Later, Suri standing openly at the counter. Then Sava entering through the front aisle. Not a single dramatic act. A series of small choices that changed what the next choice could be. Corin was the one who finally spoke. The commercial theft allegation is not supported if the vendor establishes prior consent to remove the goods. One panel member nodded. The ledger establishes purchase. Another looked at Gavin. The reporting issue remains. Gavin nodded. Corin turned to Sava. Your household status review can proceed without temporary separation if medical staff confirm you can provide care, and if a community sponsor accepts contact responsibility during the review. Sava's face went still. What does sponsor mean? Someone registered on station who agrees to receive official notices, confirm contact if appointments are missed, and help the household navigate services. It does not transfer guardianship. Surrey looked at Gavin immediately. Gavin felt the old instinct rise. Not me. I'm just the cook. He almost said it. Then he remembered Surrey walking through the front aisle with her mother on her arm. He remembered the carrier returning clean. The fruit strip, the token beneath the spice tin, the blue ribbon left on the counter when Surrey finally needed him to come. Maybe being useful did not end when the bowl was empty. Corin looked at him. Mr. Rowe. Gavin met Sava's eyes first. Not Surrey's. Sava was the parent. The choice had to be hers too. If you want me to, Gavin said. Sava studied him for several seconds. Then she nodded. I do. Surrey let out a breath so hard it was almost a laugh. The panel recessed for 19 minutes. Gavin knew because the wall clock was directly in front of him, and there was nothing else to look at without feeling like he was staring at Surrey. When the panel returned, the result was smaller than a miracle and more useful. The theft allegation was closed. Gavin received a formal warning for failing to notify welfare services once he knew an ill adult and minor were living outside registered housing. His license suspension was lifted on condition that he complete a short station safeguarding course. Sava's household entered provisional review without separating her from Surrey. The home visit nurse filed medical confirmation. Gavin was registered as contact sponsor. Corin added one more recommendation. Astor Gates Vendor Association would create a voluntary meal credit shelf funded by unused worker meal balances and direct purchases, allowing any resident to collect food without a theft report or personal disclosure to a stall owner. Mina later claimed the idea had been hers for years. Nobody believed her. The paperwork cleared that evening, and the galley shutters were released at dawn. Gavin reopened the galley 2 days later. The lunch queue wrapped around the Kashari tea booth. Half the customers ordered more food than they needed and asked whether the extra could go to the new credit shelf. Gavin refused every attempt to turn the stall into a shrine to human kindness. He put up one small sign explaining how the meal credits work. Then he went back to cooking. Corin visited during the second week. He bought soup this time. Gavin noticed, so this conversation is finally legitimate. Corin took the bowl. You still think I was wrong. I think you were incomplete. That is a diplomatic answer. I've been forced to take a safeguarding course. Corin glanced toward the new credit shelf. You passed. Barely too many forms. They are designed to slow impulsive people. Then they have failed against bureaucracy. Corin almost smiled again. Before leaving, he nodded toward the green token clipped beneath the spice shelf. You kept it. Apparently, I'm sentimental. That sounds serious. I'm monitoring the condition. Sava improved slowly. She regained enough strength to take short shifts helping Mina with inventory. Though Mina insisted this was only because Sava was the first person she had met who could make sense of her storage system. Surrey enrolled in the station learning program attached to the community office. She hated arithmetic. Gavin considered that reasonable because market tax forms had given him the same opinion. The biggest change was also the smallest. Surrey stopped checking the security aisle before approaching the galley. She stopped hiding the carrier beneath her coat. She stopped standing behind the support column. Some evenings, she helped fold napkins after school. Other evenings, she did nothing except sit at the side table and complain about assignments while Gavin worked. Sava came when she felt strong enough. When she did, Gavin always put out 3 bowls without asking. The green token no longer moved beneath the spice tin. It stayed clipped to the little hook beside the fold-out table. One morning, before the market opened, Surrey arrived carrying 3 pieces of yellow fruit. She entered through the front. Sava followed at her own pace. Gavin set 3 breakfast plates on the fold-out table. Surrey placed 1 fruit beside each plate, then reached up and straightened the old green token on its hook. The market shutters rose around them. Steam climbed from the bowls. Sava pulled out a chair. Surrey took the next one and Gavin sat in the third.